Sunday's general election in Turkey presents a stark choice that will set out the future course of the country: continue to live under a regime that has turned ever more authoritarian, or restore a heavily damaged parliamentarian democracy and promote freedoms. Since winning its third general election in 2011 with half of the votes, the ruling Justice and Development Party, AK Party, apparently intoxicated with power, has become ever more authoritarian and now routinely abuses the power of the state in an attempt to crush dissidents. The ballots to be cast on June 7 are of critical importance, but it is hard to predict the outcome of the parliamentary elections. To form a single-party government, a party must obtain at least 276 deputies, which represents an absolute majority in a parliament comprising 550 seats. A total of 20 political parties will take part in the elections. The number of eligible voters in Turkey is almost 54 million, 53,765,231 to be precise, while the figure for expatriates is almost 3 million, 2,867,658. Surveys published in recent weeks by polling companies that are not pro-government have often indicated that no single party will be able to win outright and grab power. But based on all polls, the ruling AK party is expected to emerge as the leading party. Yet, the critical thing in this poll will be whether the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, manages to cross the fabled 10% threshold. Should it fail to cross the line and not gain parliamentary representation, the AK party is likely to obtain a somewhat comfortable majority to form a government, as it will obtain a great majority of the deputies in the predominantly Kurdish southeast. The AK party and the HDP are the only parties with strong support in the region. But if the HDP manages to cross the Rubicon represented by the threshold, which seems likely if many recent polls translate into solid votes, then it is most possible that a coalition government will have to be formed. Such an eventuality would cripple President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's dream of an Alaturka presidential system, which in effect boils down to a type of one-man rule without any significant system of checks and balances. All the opposition parties are against a shift to the presidential system. Erdogan, who since 2003 had spent almost 12 years as head of 3 consecutive AK party governments before being elected president last August, has been unconstitutionally acting like a president in a presidential system by usurping the government's powers. Turkish citizens abroad have had the chance to vote in a Turkish general election for the first time. According to the Supreme Election Board, YSK, out of the nearly 2.9 million voters abroad, a total of 1,034,917 had already cast their votes by June 3. Voting abroad took place throughout May and will continue at 33 customs gates until 5 p.m. on Sunday. So far, almost 1,931,465 votes have been cast in Turkish consulates and 103,452 at customs gates. Should the pro-Kurdish HDP gain a significant portion of the expatriate votes, which is possible as many Turkish citizens of Kurdish origin live in Europe, it would considerably boost the party's chances of passing the election threshold. Roughly 1,103,000 voters who have turned 18 will vote for the first time in the elections. One of the most striking features of this election is that a president, which is constitutionally required to be impartial, asked for the first time in the history of the Turkish Republic for the public to vote for one of the parties in an election race. In his election rallies held under the guise of opening newly built facilities and meeting with people, Erdogan harshly criticized all 3 leading opposition parties. This is, by most accounts, due to Erdogan's concern that the ruling party's votes are in sharp decline and that Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has been unsuccessful in arresting that decline. Opposition vows to call corruption suspects to account. Claims of corruption in the government have been, together with economic promises, an integral part of the opposition party's election discourse to win over voters. Erdogan is highly concerned, because he is well aware that the moment the AK party loses power, leading ruling party figures as well as himself will be called to account before law on various charges, first and foremost for corruption. Two graft probes that went public in December 2013 revealed that four then cabinet ministers, their sons as well as some bureaucrats and prominent business people were involved in corruption. Voice recordings leaked over the internet following the graft probes revealed that Erdogan and some of his family members were also implicated in corruption. A public prosecutor and a police chief who took part in the probes also confirmed in recent months that the evidence indicated that Erdogan is a major suspect in the corruption investigation. Thanks to its control over the judiciary, the government got the charges against all the suspects in the probes dropped, but the opposition has vowed to relaunch the investigation, enabling all guilty parties to be called to account. According to a poll conducted by Conda Polling Company at the end of May, which the Cumhuriyet Daily published on Friday, the ruling AK party might get between 270 to 278 deputies. Based on the poll, the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, is expected to get between 120 and 130 deputies, the Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, between 75 and 95 deputies, and the HDP between 60 and 70, naturally on condition that the HDP passes the threshold. Election security top of agenda. Election security has been a major topic throughout the campaign period, with the opposition fearing that the ruling party could attempt to rig the elections to emerge victorious. Although the Supreme Election Board, YSK, to be precise, is responsible for the fairness of the elections, opposition groups have no trust in the election body, as recent developments revealed that the body also acts under the government's influence. The YSK has issued no statement against President Erdogan's campaign in favor of the ruling party, maintaining that it is not authorized to intervene in the actions of the president. This, despite the fact that Erdogan's actions represent not only a blatant violation of the constitution, but also of the fairness of the elections. So, opposition parties have prepared to take their own measures against any potential rigging. Some foreign bodies, including the European Parliament, EP, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, will also be closely monitoring Turkey's critical polls. Kadi Piri, the EP's Turkey rapporteur, was in Turkey at the end of May to meet with representatives of the government, the opposition, media, and civil society groups. She was quoted as telling the main opposition CHP that the European Union would closely monitor the elections. Piri also criticized the increasing pressure over the independent media outlets ahead of the elections, expressing the EP's concerns over the government's attitude. An OSCE observer mission also arrived in Turkey on Thursday to monitor the elections. The parliamentarians are scheduled to meet with representatives of the YSK, political parties, members of the media and civil societies, representatives of the Radio and Television Supreme Council, RTUK, and long-term observers from the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, ODIHR.